budget that was within the revenue guidelines. That's
Right.
been a hoped-for result.
Right.
It's possible that if you were voting a budget on February 16th, you might be voting a budget that might be in excess of the revenue guidelines at that point in time.
Right.
Therefore, you're moving towards bringing the path in a different direction.
Right.
You'll also note that this brings the Finance Committee more actively into the process, given their suggesting a Saturday morning workshop with them to discuss the budget.
I guess I don't know about saying we're definitely going to vote the budget on February 16th. I guess I don't.
I would personally rather ask the administration to come back with a timeline which includes public hearings.
From our administration.
Yep. I don't mind if we have to add a couple of meetings to our schedule to get them in, but I'm okay with a preliminary budget in early December. But I don't want to rush the process and eliminate the public hearing pieces.
Okay. And I don't know, David, do we want to discuss the rest of this document here? Because I know that the Finance Committee has put this document together that they hope to get signed by both, I think the Chairman of the Board of Selectmen and the Chairman of the School Committee. The way it's written now, I have an issue with the requirements in terms of our collective bargaining and having to get them cost analysis and give them 30 days to give us a report back on what they think of the cost analysis. I don't think that that's going to work. I don't know if have you had a chance to read that? Or?
I've read it, and absolutely. I think it basically says to us that you don't necessarily, even though it's shit. I'm sorry. Apologies. I don't think it gives us the authority that we need when we're going to collective bargaining.
Right.
We need to have authority. We can't be saying to them, well, this is dependent upon us having a cost analysis done and getting a recommendation back from the Finance Committee.
I mean, it is a
I have no problem with doing a cost analysis, saying here's the cost analysis
Right,
of this
but then we're going to move
proposal.
forward. And they say it's a non-binding recommendation, but I guess one, we can't wait 30 days. Sometimes we might be in the heat of getting a contract signed, and I don't think we can wait 30 days. And then we may have to reach an agreement 15 days after we make a proposal to the teachers.
And it's just I think it sends a message to the other side of the bargaining that we may have to.
We're not the final say.
Exactly.
Right.
I think
Exactly.
that the Finance Committee has a very important role in the big picture of the town finances, and I applaud them for trying to interject more into the process. But I would rather have their recommendations before we go into contract talks, some guidelines, some suggestions,
Even that.
but not after the fact.
I'm not even sure. I mean, I suppose if they have recommendations or suggestions, then we certainly couldn't ignore them. But I don't know. The collective bargaining process is such that we cannot be bringing in extraneous, parties to it, and because the bargaining process between us and the Teachers Association or any of the other associations that we deal with.
But if they want us to consider, a cap on raises, looking at time and length of day, I mean, if they've got some ideas, they should share them. But
Right.
I'd rather hear them before we start so that we can talk about it and strategize, but not after the fact. I don't want to, after the fact say, gee, maybe you should have considered this. Well,
I just don't
what good does
think
that do?
I
It
think the
doesn't
way
do
I think the
anything
way-
after the
I
fact.
think the way the document's written, I don't think it's practical for us to be bound by that.
I agree, and as Jerry said, I wouldn't have a problem passing the information along, saying, looks like we have a tentative agreement, and here's what we think but that's it. We're not going to wait for a recommendation.
I mean, I think, again, when we get to a point where we're, considering approving something, that we do a cost analysis.
Right.
I mean, well, obviously, we're going to do it because we
Yeah,
need to
anyway.
know. I mean,
Yeah.
Carl's going to do that
Right.
because we need to know how much it's going to cost. But I don't think we can make it contingent upon an additional recommendation, because you can bet that regardless of what we agree to, somebody's gonna have something they wanna change.
Right.
You know, if we send it over, so.
And comment, Dr. Trout?
Just under 150E, the town administrator has the right legally to be part of the collective bargaining process. There are slight variations on that. If the committee as a whole, if the entire committee is involved directly in the contract negotiations, then the town administrator or town manager, whatever title, is a member of the school committee for that purpose. But if the school committee, as North Reading School Committee, does not have the committee as a whole directly involved, it's a subcommittee, two members, then what typically happens is that in executive session, the entire committee is updated on a regular basis by the two members of the school committee members of the negotiating team, and the town administrator is able to attend those executive sessions.
In vote.
And that ultimately, in
Vote.
the end, they would represent the sixth vote
Right.
on any contracts.
Right.
Collective bargain, that are collectively bargained.
I think the other issue too is that, and again, just from the one past experience I've had doing this, that there's an agreement generally too between the two sides as to what information will be disseminated.
Yeah, that's true.
Prior to, a vote taking place as well. So I think there's some complications there, and I'm not sure, I don't know that we want to give up or share the power we have to negotiate that contract with another agency.
So if we may even be at some level of violation, even if we provided the cost analysis to the,
Well, yes.
depending on what we can
Depending
share.
Depending on what we
Fine,
agree
right.
to, and quite frankly, without reading chapter 150E, I'm not even sure what legal ramifications there might be to enter into that type of agreement, especially a signed agreement. I mean, I would think that once we, and I guess I agree with Maureen, if there's some parameters they want to lay out generally, we'll take those into consideration. It
Yes.
doesn't mean we can necessarily live by them, because
No.
if you take those into negotiations, forget about it. You just,
Right.
We can't go in there and say, well, these are the parameters set up for us by,
No, I don't
by the
mean that.
finance committee.
But certainly they may have, insight into
Yeah.
other issues, long-term.
And I think there is one issue actually, that they're probably looking at, I heard Bob and Sarah mention this, and that's the health insurance issue.
Right.
That overall, they may be recommending to all of the bargaining units, that we take this into consideration when we're bargaining contracts.
It was a question I had.
We
now
haven't
that we're on.
bargained that, right? We
The-
haven't bargained that in the past.
Right, the health insurance a bargain, but is that by law? Because there was some discussion today with MASC members, and I went
Right.
specifically to Mike Gilbert and asked for clarification. In some towns, the health insurance is bargained individually
Right.
with the
With the
unions.
unions.
So that, they were surprised that the school committee did not include discussions on health insurance. with
But it
our
is in the contract, right?
It's
percentage.
in all contracts. No, the percentage is not. What's in the contract is that a particular group would receive what any other group, public group is receiving in the town. And I don't know for sure, but I think there's something under the town's charter that refers to the whole insurance piece of it. But there's nothing in the contract that specifies that the school committee would be bargaining insurance separately with its respective groups. That's not to say the law prohibits it.
Okay, so that's not a state law.
I don't
It's-
believe so.
I think we should get some of that information. I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but I thought we had to do it that way, and there may be some benefits to us. Breaking the logjam that seems to exist with the town moving to a shift in code.
I think there is some intention to try to move in that direction,
Mhm.
obviously. At least changing the structure of the way it exists now.
Right. We've got to push that along.
Any other comments? So I guess the next step with this is, I can't sign it as is. I don't know if we want to propose a different, I guess to Jerry's point though, I just don't know what we can sign that's related to bargaining. I don't know if I'm comfortable signing anything related to bargaining.
You know what, I don't think we should sign anything. We've been meeting as members of the finance planning team religiously for a few years now. We have a great cooperative spirit in that meeting. We've made, I think, a lot of headway in helping both sides understand the budget and the revenues. I don't see the necessity for putting something in writing. We're not at odds with each other.
Well, and most of this is, as you say, are things that we talk about at our meetings every month, and now we're moving to more often meeting.
I mean, we have more support from general government than we've had.
Right.
And more each year, so.
And we do, I think we have a meeting this Friday, don't we, finance planning? So we can discuss this Friday at the finance planning team.
Although I certainly like and would support a workshop session between the school committee
Absolutely.
and the finance committee.
But
It would seem totally inappropriate to have a document just signing between various groups between the finance committee, the selectmen, and the school committee. But that seems to be totally redundant type of agreement where the groups are already cooperating and working together. This is a redundancy, and it just seems to me to be inappropriate.
So we'll table this for now, and also on the schedule, I guess I'm uncomfortable with committing that February 16th date, so I don't think we can vote on the schedule anyway.
Vote on the date,
So
yeah, we can.
we'll just move forward. I think the December date, Carl, is that a little bit earlier than we normally?
Last year we came out.
Last year was around Thanksgiving.
December 15th?
Yeah, is that?
Well, it used to be, for many years, it was first week of January.
Last week you had an early
It-
jump on it.
it-
right?
Yeah, November we did last year, yeah.
We will certainly do this, but the problem I have with it, frankly, is that it means that your starting point is really not nearly as accurate as it could be. Because it's not based on, what ends up happening is the FY10 budget's going to be based on FY08 numbers. You haven't even reached the halfway point of this fiscal year. And to issue a budget December 15th means I need to have started September 1st to do it. I can do this, and I'm not saying this to complain. I think it's more that I just know that the outcome, I know that Joe Tassoni feels the same thing on the general government side. The earlier you start, the more tentative all your numbers are.
Yeah.
So, and it also expands and lengthens the budget process. And speaking very candidly, maybe people better than I can tell me why that's a good idea. I think we've gotten to the point where our budget process
It's
is 8 or
year-round.
9 months
Right.
long,
Mhm.
and it's just a series of ups and downs and ups and downs. I have stronger feelings about that. But having said that, I can deliver this budget December 15th. if
And
that's what
most
I'm asked
likely
to do.
it will be a budget that will then get pared down,
Possibly.
because it will be all inclusive.
Right, when you do the budget that early, you have to have a lot of fallback
Right.
positions all through it.
Oh, yeah. I
And
mean,
that
the only
just-
thing is, our budget thing now isn't necessarily totally dependent on the revenue figures. I hate to say it in a kind of a crass
Right, no,
way,
no, no.
but we're not necessarily saying, gee, whatever the revenue figure is, that's what our, but, because we don't. So my train of thought has been that you get our budget out there, our needs out there as early as possible to say, look, this is what our needs are, so that people know what they are. Because even though we have to, we have to take into consideration the revenue numbers aren't gonna determine our budget. It's
We already
great.
know
well,
they're gonna be like $500,000,
Yeah, we've already been given
$500,000.
$500,000 is the number to work for in terms of the
So,
increase in our
We
budget.
already know,
you know,
we can't meet that.
But I think what Sherry's saying is what we've always done, at least what we've done the past few years. Here's to maintain what we have today. All the teachers, all the programs, for pretty much the same number of students, which we're pretty confident we're gonna have, here's how much it'll cost.
Another,
Right.
yes, thank you. And another interesting aspect of this is that unlike general government, the school committee's budget is a bottom line budget. And we have not traditionally defended each and every line within the budget. So it'll be interesting to see how the external analysis of our budget works out, given the fact that, it's a very different, we approach the budget very differently for that.
But the question I have there is, there's no requirement for us to defend the budget on a